On behalf of Spokane Community College and the Hagen Center for the Humanities, I would like to welcome all of you. We invite you collectively to sit down together, all of us at the same table at the same time, to engage in dialogue about race, about diversity, and about equity. I am Stacy Kalko, our historian here at SCC, and I will be your host this evening. We encourage audience participation. If you would like to ask questions of our guests this evening, please type them into the comments, or if you are not logged into social media, you can email your questions to scc.hagencenter@scc.spokane.edu. That's scc.hagencenter@scc.spokane.edu. Our moderators will forward those questions to me, and I will make sure we get to ask our guests as many of those questions as we are able. We are honored to acknowledge that the community colleges of Spokane and our main campuses for Spokane Falls and Spokane Community College are located on the traditional and sacred homelands of the Spokane tribe. We also provide services in the region that includes the traditional and sacred homelands of the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation and the Kalispel tribe. We pay our respects to tribal elders, both past and present, as well as to all Indigenous people today. This land holds their cultural DNA, and we are honored and grateful to be here on their traditional lands. We give thanks to the legacy of the original people and their descendants, and pledge to honor their stewardship and values. The presentation you're about to enjoy is part of Humanities Washington's Speakers Bureau program. Humanities Washington is a nonprofit organization dedicated to opening minds and bridging divides by creating spaces to explore different perspectives. Thanks to support from the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Washington Secretary of State, the Thomas S. Foley Institute for Public Policy and Public Service at Washington State University, and generous private donors, Humanities Washington Speakers Bureau presenters visit all corners of the state. I would encourage you to visit their website, www.humanities.org, to find other events just like this one. A note on civil discourse. The Speakers Bureau program is designed to generate an open and honest conversation on many topics, some of which can be controversial. We encourage differing points of view, and we ask that you treat this topic, the speaker, and each other with respect. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker tonight, Rais Bhuiyan. Rais Bhuiyan is the founder of World Without Hate, a nonprofit focused on preventing and disrupting hate and violence and restoring peace and understanding through storytelling and empathy. His story is chronicled in the book, The True American, Murder and Mercy in Texas by Anand Giridharadas. This work is an examination of the 2001 xenophobic murders and the attempted murder by Mark Stroman of people he perceived as Muslim in the wake of the attacks on 9/11. His rampage left 2 dead, and our honored speaker tonight, Rais Bhuiyan, critically injured. The title, Murder and Mercy, embodies the oxymoronic juxtaposition of Stroman's horrendous acts of violence and Bhuiyan's determined attempt to rescue his assailant from the death penalty. Rais Bhuiyan now lives in Seattle, and we are honored to have him speak with us tonight. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Stacy, for that kind introduction. And you said my name and the writer's name perfectly. Usually people stumble us saying the writer's last name, but you did perfect. So thank you so much once again. Where are you from?
I am originally.
Sorry, go ahead.
I am originally from Louisiana.
Oh, okay. So you have a flexible tongue, and you pronounce both names perfectly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Where are you from? Not.
I am originally. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's so. This question is part of my presentation. So so I will ask this question once again. This is a part of the part of my presentation. This where are you from? This question. Where are you from? Not a typical question to ask during an armed robbery inside a gas station. Having been robbed before, I immediately opened the cash register and offered him money. The cash I placed on the counter in exchange for my life remained untouched, and his gaze remained fixed, pointing the shotgun straight at my face. I felt cold air flow through my spine. 20 years later, I can still feel the chill as I recall the incident. Before going too far, I want to thank Humanities Washington and Spokane Community College for making it possible for us to come together today. A very special thank you to Goen and Obed Perez for their coordination and support. And most of all, thank you for joining us. Let me backtrack slightly. After graduating as a pilot officer from the Bangladeshi Air Force, I did not feel my destiny was there, and my American dream kept calling me. Eventually, I left my career, my family, and my home for New York City to pursue computer science. Growing up watching Wild Wild West movies, I could not resist a friend's invitation to visit Texas. Excited to see the ranches, cowboys, bars with their famous swinging doors, though I never did find one. I eventually moved to Dallas, working by day and studying computer science by night. 10 days after 9/11 terrorist attacks, as rescuers continued to search ground zero for signs of life, our country in deep mourning, a newfound fear and uncertainty looming, I began what would be my last day of work as a store clerk in Southeast Dallas. Around noon, a man wearing a bandana, sunglasses, and a baseball cap, carrying a double-barrel shotgun walked in. Pointing the gun directly at my face, he asked, "Where are you from?" Despite pleading for my life, he pulled the trigger from point blank range. First, I felt it, like a million bees were stinging my face. Then I heard it, the explosion. I looked down and saw blood pouring like an open faucet from the right side of my head. Frantically and instinctively, I placed both hands on my face, thinking I had to keep my brain from spilling out. I remember screaming "Mom" on top of my voice. I fell to the floor, left to die on the cold concrete convenience store floor. With adrenaline coursing in and my military training kicking in, I eventually made my way to the barbershop next door. I screamed, begging them to call 911. As they did, I caught myself in the mirror. The image reflected back was gruesome, like something straight out of a horror movie. In the instant it took to pull the trigger, I had become disfigured, was losing blood and strength rapidly, fighting to stay awake, fighting to stay alive. On September 21st, 2001, my American dream turned into an American nightmare. On the way to the hospital, in and out of consciousness, images of my family appeared before my eyes. And then a graveyard. I promised God that if He let me live, I would do good things with my life. A few years after I was shot, I finally lost consciousness and was put on life support. And the next thing I remember, I was asking, Where am I? Thinking I had died, I anxiously waited. And when I heard, "Good morning, Mr. Bhuiyan, you are in the hospital," it was one of the most beautiful moments of my life. But within a few hours, the hospital, which was private and expensive, and I did not have health insurance at that time, discharged me and asked me and told me to arrange follow-up medical treatments on my own. The second part of my American nightmare just began. And as a result of the shooting, I underwent several eye surgeries. Unfortunately, though, I ended up losing sight in one eye. The right side of my face and skull was and remains peppered with more than 36 shotgun pellets. I lost my job, my sense of security, and my fiance, but gained more than $60,000 in medical bills. I reached out to the Red Cross, but they informed me I was only qualified for 1 week's worth of groceries. There is not a single day that goes by that I am not reminded of or affected by this painful tragedy, but I continue to make peace with my pain. My shooter, Mark Stroman, killed 2 South Asian men during his 9/11 retaliation shooting spree. And Stroman claimed that he was hunting Arabs. But not one of his victims was Middle Eastern. After his arrest, he told the news media that he had done what most Americans wanted to do. They just didn't have the guts. He claimed that he was the true American, a patriot. He blamed me and my kind for 9/11, and he said America was no place for Muslims. Mark was tried and convicted. In 2002, he was sentenced to death by lethal injection. The story could have ended there, but it did not. Over the next several years, I went through an intense healing process, physically, mentally, and spiritually. In such traumatic, critical moments in life, I don't think we can blame anyone for giving up or finding relief or finding temporary relief in the wrong places. For me, like too many others, when there is no support structure, there is no help, when you experience betrayal at every turn from your loved ones, friends, and in my case, even perfect vision, you can very often betray yourself. I had that choice, but ultimately I could not let myself down. My dreams were bigger than my fears. My faith as my guide, I prayed for mercy and strength to face my adversities. I asked God to help me to rebuild my life. Many obstacles were thrown along the way. 2 steps forward, sometimes 3 back. But I slowly began to rebuild my life, attending school and working as a waiter in a local restaurant. And also, the reason I started working in a restaurant also to help overcome my fear of being in public, especially large bald-headed white men with tattoos, and to interact with people again. And along the way, I also bought booklets to learn to talk Texan. Like, y'all come back and try our Texas iced. I learned a number called 50, which is the number between 49 and 51. It's called 50, to bond with the locals. I transformed myself from airman to store clerk to waiter to survive. Though I lost a great deal, I did not lose my hope. my dreams, or my faith. In school, I learned that if I ever fall, I should get right back up and try again. Giving up was not an option for me. And I never questioned God about why all of this was happening to me. I believed that He was preparing me for something bigger. And that helped me to see myself as a survivor, not simply a victim. I remember my parents sharing a verse from the Holy Quran, chapter 2, verse 286. God will never place a burden on a soul that it cannot bear. I went through great difficulties, but I made it and become stronger each day. I remember another verse from my childhood, chapter 94, verse 5 and 6. So verily, with every difficulty, there is relief. Verily, with every difficulty, there is relief. And slowly, relief came. An acquaintance took me in, so I had a place to stay. A Christian doctor performed eye surgeries before receiving assurance he would be paid. An Air Force veteran gave me his extra car. A man from the local mosque gave me scholarship to attend school. And because of that education, I was able to get a good IT job. This is the America, generous, hospitable, warm, and welcoming, that I heard so much about growing up. With the mercy of God and the help of many kind and caring Americans, I was eventually able to get my life back on track. And in 2009, I was extremely fortunate to go on a religious pilgrimage. It was in Mecca where I deeply realized that hate and revenge may bring temporary satisfaction, but does not bring peace or lasting solutions. It only brings more misery and disaster. Though I had forgiven Mark long ago, it wasn't until I was in Mecca that I truly began reflecting upon the shooting incident and my would-be killer sitting on death row, waiting to die. I realized that forgiveness was not enough. I deeply felt by executing Mark, we would simply lose a human life without dealing with the root cause. Instead of hating him, I began to see him as a human like me, not just a killer. I saw him as a victim too. I credit my faith and upbringing in giving me the courage and strength not only to forgive, but also to fight to save the life of the man who tried to end mine. With the support of my mentors, friends, acquaintances, and Amnesty International, I began to lobby to save the life of my attacker. Working with Reprieve, a London-based nonprofit, we took our campaign to the European Union and German parliaments, as well as the headquarters of Lundbeck, the lethal injection manufacturer in Denmark. We convinced them to urge the governor of Texas not to use their product to kill. After our visit, Lundbeck also announced they would stop supplying this drug to the US prisons carrying out executions. We also petitioned the US Supreme Court asking for clemency for my attacker. In the meantime, Mark came to know about me and the diverse coalition of Hindus, Christians, Jewish, Muslims, atheists, and all who rallied together to get him removed from death row. I was told he was stunned and deeply touched by our efforts. This was not something he expected from a Muslim. In a statement, he said that in a free world, I was free, but was locked up in a prison inside myself because of the hate I carried in my heart. He also wrote a long letter to me from death row, allow me to read a paragraph from it. He said that my stepfather taught me some lessons that I should have never learned. It has taken me for too long to unlearn some of them, and I'm still working on some of them. I don't know who your parents were, but it is obvious they are wonderful people to lead you to act this way to someone you have every right to hate. He thanked the entire Muslim community for their support and condemned his own acts of violence. You know, it moves me profoundly to think that the man who tried to kill me because of the ways in which I was different learned to see the ways in which we were the same enough to call me brother. He hated me when he didn't know me, but in the end said he loved me. It seems to me that although retaliation is a natural response, it does not make you feel as good as you think it will. Any harm you inflict or hope to see inflicted against another human being winds up hurting you too. Once you get to know the other, it is hard for you to hate them. God says in the Holy Quran, chapter 41, verse 34, "Idfa' billati hiya ahsan," which means when people are mean to you, be nice back to them. The person who is your enemy will become your friend. And that is exactly what happened here. Empathy and forgiveness had a transformative effect on Mark. Though he suffered from tremendous childhood abuse and trauma, a lack of love, education, and guidance, living much of his life embroiled in ignorance, hate, and violence, he ended his life in peace, receiving love, kindness, and mercy from the very people he once hated, renewing his faith in Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, and in humanity. Before he was executed, his last words were, "Hate is going on everywhere. It has to stop. Hate causes a lifetime of pain." Because I forgave Mark and sought clemency for him, I'm often asked, do I believe in justice? Of course, I believe in accountability and justice. My faith and upbringing taught me the power, benefit, and beauty of forgiveness, and that justice is truly served if it is tempered with mercy. Showing mercy by reducing Mark's punishment to life in prison would not minimize justice. Rather, it could have supported his journey of redemption and healing, while possibly even helping others like him to learn from his mistakes. And that would have been a true balance between justice and mercy. You know, all these years later, I still see reflections of my attacker's pain everywhere. The evidence is in our news feed every single day. In the routine killing of Blacks and police officers, in the epidemic of shootings in our schools, religious institutions, and music festivals, in the swastikas painted on synagogue walls, in the burning and bombing of mosques, in the devaluation of women, and in the turning away of poor, tired refugees and immigrants. Hate crimes have reached a 16-year high. But it must be noted that most hate crimes are never recorded. From this slide, you can see that according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, there are 733 hate groups currently in the US. 733 hate groups active in the US right now. And 19 of which are based here in Washington State. The only place I feel safe in America is after passing the security checkpoint at the airport. America needs to heal and reconcile to get beyond our country's old wounds from slavery, racism, inequality, systemic oppression, intolerance, and hate. We must access empathy and forgiveness and truly learn to understand and accept and respect our fellow citizens as humans first, regardless of who they are or where they came from, to truly begin the healing and reconciliation process. I believe all of you here today want a better, just, and more peaceful world. But what are you prepared to do to get it? I believe it starts within each of us, taking a moment to check our moral compass, how we carry ourselves every day, what we teach our children. Take a moment to soften your heart, make your tone a little bit friendlier. Find ways to connect with people unlike you. Listen respectfully, even if you disagree, because it could lead you to the unlikeliest source of wisdom. And try to lead with empathy and forgiveness, most especially for yourself. There is no heroism in hating, hurting, or in my attacker's case, killing. Mark realized this after paying the ultimate price, causing tremendous pain and suffering to others as well as to himself. I will never forget the sound of my shooter's voice asking me, "Where are you from?" right before he pulled the trigger, just as I will never forget the same voice 10 years later telling me, "I love you, bro." Can you imagine how different things would have been if Mark had led with empathy rather than hate? Here is Mark in his own words at the end of his life.
For this man to forgive me, which I've done the unforgivable, for him to come forward the way he did, it speaks volume. It speaks volume for the human race. Mr. Reyes, thank you for your inspiring act of compassion towards me. You have forgiven me. You have forgiven the unforgivable, and I have a lot of love and respect for you. For the Patels, the Hassans, thank y'all for what y'all have done. The question is, if I don't make it, what do I want you to carry on? Man, just what you're doing today is remarkable. To get out there and take center stage and try to get the world, put the world to rights. That's a remarkable thing you're doing, and just continue with the human rights movement, because you are touching so many people. I've been getting so many letters and messages from all over the world that you, Mr. Reyes, are inspiring them, and that right there strengthens me. So, dude, just rock on. Thank you for giving me. Okay.
Empathy and forgiveness have helped me to contend with my trauma, a way to make peace with my pain that I carry. It is important to note that this is an ongoing process, often a lifetime journey. When we are hurt, our instinct is often to recoil in self-protection. We are not likely to respond with mercy and understanding immediately after being hurt or wronged. It takes time to process, to think through what happened, and to choose how to move on. There is immense power in forgiveness, and research shows that the more we hold onto anger and resentment, the longer we suffer. If you are holding onto a grudge, I urge you, free yourself. This is a process and will take time because ultimately, forgiveness must come from within. What I have experienced, not only for myself, but also by speaking with people around the world, is that forgiveness can truly transform lives. Most recently, a young woman from South Africa reached out telling me that my story and messages of forgiveness and empathy inspired her to live. She was on the brink of suicide, having experienced trauma both as a victim and as a victimizer. And as she forgives herself and others, she also holds on to hope for happiness and prosperity. I leave you with this. We truly have the power to transform negatives into positives, weaknesses into strength, ignorance into wisdom, fear into courage, and hate into love, through the power of empathy and forgiveness. Sometimes we just need to find some inspiration and guidance to discover our inner strength and resilience. From this, healing and peace can be found for ourselves and for the creation of a world that we all deserve. A world without violence, a world without victims, and a world without hate. I conclude with this short video.
A white supremacist shot me in the face in the days following the September 11th attacks. I hit rock bottom, but I didn't give up on humanity. Eventually, I forgave and even befriended my assailant, who ultimately renounced his hateful views.
What if someone tried to kill you? If you could face him again, what would you do?
On Wednesday, he was with a team inside of Austin's federal courthouse.
Bhuiyan is now calling on Perry to heed his demand for mercy and lower Stroman's punishment to life in prison.
America is a beautiful nation of people. You don't have to be Muslim to fight Islamophobia. You don't have to be Jewish to denounce anti-Semitism. And where you don't have to be black to honor black lives. We can all work to stop discrimination and prejudice against any and all of our neighbors, co-workers, classmates, family, and friends. Let's come to know one another. Won't you join us?
Join us.
Join us. Join us.
Join us to fight for a world without hate.
Once again, thank you so very much for taking the time to join us today.
And thank you, Rais. Brilliant, thought-provoking, intensely personal look at the faults and the potential in United States society and culture. We have some questions coming in. So let me get my glasses ready. We have a question from the audience asking, we are now over 2 decades past September 11th. What do you see in your life and lived experiences in the United States as some of our biggest challenges now?
Well, that's a very good question. The biggest challenge since 9/11, the amount of misinformation, ignorance, hate, and intolerance are some of the biggest issues I see that is causing so much division, so much distress, so much disconnect in our society, in our country. After 9/11, Islamophobia was on the rise, and but after a certain time, it went down a little bit. But at the time of when President Obama was running for election, the then candidate Obama was running for election, it came back. And we saw again when during the last 2 elections, 2016 and 2020, we saw again the Islamophobia was again, getting a lot of momentum. But we also saw January 6th last year, which we never even imagined that we would see something like this in our lifetime. So it all goes back to the same point that when we are divided because of a lot of misinformation, a lot of fear, mistrust, ignorance, anything can happen. Once we do not stand up against any particular group being thrown under the bus, once you do not stand up against human suffering, hate, and violence, is going to come back and affect everyone in the society, not just those who are victim of hate, violence, and intolerance. It's like hate is like a cancer. If we allow hate to spread, it will spread to the entire body and even to others. So back to your point that the biggest challenge I see in our country right now, and also all over the world, is the misinformation, racism, intolerance, and hate and violence. We all need to come together and stand up against human suffering, regardless of the victims.
That would be an amazing thing to see occur. Another question we have from our audience is, what advice would you give to someone, especially someone who doesn't live near cities, to begin this work?
Well, you don't have to live in a city to do this work. You can do wherever you are. Start within your own community. We all are human beings. We have all our responsibilities. So, it's not the responsibility of only the people in big town, in big cities. We all are suffering one way or the other. So start wherever you are within your own circle. If you are in a small, a neighborhood, just start the conversation over food, over, something very neutral. Invite people to have a conversation over coffee, and, create the safe environment where people can make themselves vulnerable, where people feel comfortable to open up, and, to create that kind of environment. Just let people know that this is a non-judgmental environment where you are welcome to come and share your story. You don't have to, share anything else but your own life experience, the lived experience. Just come and share a story and share a meal with us. So, you can start from, let me go back one step. Start within your family instead of going to the neighborhood. Start within your family and friends. Invite them. Because right now, the country we're living in, we're highly divided because of our political views, because over vaccination. I mean, it's so, shocking that the country is divided even over vaccination, right? So even within the family, I have spoken with a lot of families, a lot of people in the meantime, within the last couple of years, they're highly divided over vaccination. So, start the conversation within the family, friends, and then gradually, go bigger and invite people. But the most crucial point is the environment, safe environment where people would feel comfortable to open up.
You're right. There's something about that inclusiveness, about the misunderstanding your question at the beginning of the talk. I was born and raised in the Deep South, which is a very different cultural reality than here in Washington State, where I've spent the last 30 years. And that openness and invitation, in my experience, really breaks down some of those barriers too. Thank you.
Of course.
I had a question run across my mind that I wanted to ask.
Sure.
When you give these talks, when you give these presentations, what is a question you hope to get from the audience?
That's a very good question. I expect one simple question, that what we as an individual and collectively can do to make this world a better place for us and for our next generations. There is so much division, so much intolerance, so much misunderstanding everywhere, which creates a lot of hate and violence. So that is the question. It's a simple question. I expect always that people would discuss and also get involved, not just hearing from me, but they will also share their 2 cents that this is what I can do, this is what I can do, this is what I did, and this was the result, because I see this event not just one way that me as a speaker going to talk for this many minutes and then tell you, because I don't know everything. I know maybe a little bit. I can share from my lived experience, but you all also know a lot of things that you can share, and we all can share thoughts and ideas through this event that can benefit all of us. So back to the question, to that the answer to that question, there are 3 simple things we all can do, wherever we are, small town, big town, urban, suburban, wherever we are. These simple 3 things. The first is treat everyone as humans first, regardless of who they are, where they came from, whatever is their faith, whatever is their gender, identity, sexual orientation, just treat everyone as humans. It is so soothing and comforting when you treat someone with respect and kindness, and the response you get in return. I mean, I get goosebumps every time I talk about this, that treating people with respect and dignity is the best thing you can do. So treat people as humans, regardless of who they are. Number 2 is stand up against human suffering, regardless of the victims. Do not pick and choose that I will only stand up if my kind of people is under the bus. If they're suffering, I will speak up. And to be honest with you, this is a mentality I see in our society, very actively present. There are people who would feel empathy only for their kind of people, their group of people, and they would not stand up. It's not, I'm not saying that they are, bad people or, they're causing pain and suffering. They feel empathy only for a certain group of people, but not for others who are suffering. And, and I have seen in some cases, they stood up when someone from their group were thrown under the bus. So let's not do that. Let's stand up against human suffering, regardless of who they are. If you see someone is bullying a hijabi, Muslim woman, please stand up. If you see someone is being racist, please stand up. If someone is, bully, just stand up, and you will see if we all do this, there'll be less pain and suffering, there'll be less victims, there'll be less violence in our society, because we all are standing up for each other. And that is called humanity. Once you stand up for me and I stand up for you, that is true humanity. There'll be no room for, violence, racism, intolerance. And the third thing is reach out to people, and especially those who are unlike you. Because we are one way or the other, we are already connected with the people who look like us, speak like us, do things on a regular basis like us or like me. We are connected one with the other, but we are not connected with those who are different from us. And that is the, that should be the inspiration to make that connection, that this person is different. And here's an opportunity to make a connection and find ways. Sometimes just a small act of kindness can help build that connection. If you are, going through Starbucks, or maybe, I don't want to, promote any fast food or any kind of business, but just for the sake of conversation, that if you're, at a drive-through place, you can just pay for the person behind you, but make sure it's not a few $100 bill. Of course, I'm not encouraging you to do that. That's a small act of kindness. If you are, walking on the street and if you see someone is needing your help, do your best, and if you could ask, something to know that person's story, that what led him to in this situation, you will see there is so much to learn. There is so much, peace and comfort performing this small act of kindness. When someone is looking for help in your family, in your friend circle, just reach out to them. So back to the point, that the 3 points I said, just to recap, that treat everyone as humans first, stand up against human suffering, regardless of the victims. And last but not least is reach out to people, especially those who are different from you.
Another excellent question from our audience. It's very easy to see how you could be a role model, how you, Rais, can be a role model for change. Who are your mentors and role models for change over this experience?
That's a very good question. As I mentioned in my speech, that I lost almost everything except my faith, my dream, and my hope. So dream and hope was always there, and faith was shaken a little bit in the beginning, because I did nothing to get shot in the face. I did nothing to be hated. But this terrible thing happened to me, and I went through a ripple effect, which put me on a rock bottom situation. As I said, that the hospital discharged me next day, and I had no money in my pocket at the time. And it took almost 2 weeks to get my first treatment. And that 2 weeks was extremely painful. I felt pretty bad that, this is what America is my dream country, and this is what I'm going through. It was unbelievable what I experienced. And then, the mental, the psychological trauma and the fear of getting shot again and losing my life. And then in course of time, when my fiance left, I was thinking, God, I'm going through one after another, when it will come to an end. I never questioned why, but I was talking to myself that when will it come to an end, and when I will be able to, move on with my life. It's just one after another one. Give me the courage, give me the strength to face these adversities one after another one. I don't want to lose my faith. I don't want to lose my hope and dreams, but help me. At that moment, I thought about my parents, advice, the lessons I learned from them at a very young age. And I remember my mother taught me one very important lesson at a very young age. She said, whenever you are hurt, whenever you are angry, the first thing you should do put a zipper on your mouth. Means control your tongue. And if you do that, it would help you to de-escalate the situation right there. The person who was mean, the person who hurt you, will get a chance to reflect that I was so mean, I hurt this person, but he did not retaliate right away. And if you take time, it will help you to respond wisely. So after this shooting incident, I remember my dad advice, and I kept my mouth shut. And I remember my parents' advice as well. One of the other advice that in a moment like that, forgive and move forward. But if you struggle to forgive and move forward, leave it up to God or to the justice system or to the administration. But you do not take any revenge. You do not stay sad, depressed, and angry. Forgive and move on. If not, leave it up to them. But revenge, thoughts of violence should never come to your mind. You should move forward. So that advice helped me a lot. And then I thought about my prophet, Muhammad, peace be upon him. His life is full of stories about mercy and forgiveness. And even when he came back to Mecca with a victory, without any bloodshed, he forgave the people of Mecca who killed and tortured many of his followers for 20 years. And then when he came back with the full authority to punish these people, he told the people of Mecca that what Prophet Joseph told his brother, I'm telling you the same thing today. You all are free to go. There is no revenge. There is no hard feelings to you at all today. You all are free. Even he forgave the person who killed his uncle during a war. And even he forgave that lady. And then when he went to Taif, a city near Mecca, to preach one God's message, the people of Taif brutally tortured him, and because of which he was near to death. At that moment, Angel Gabriel came and asked him that if he wanted to punish the people of Taif, that Angel Gabriel would carry out that desire. But instead of seeking punishment, Prophet Muhammad raised his hands and he asked God to help the people of Taif who did not realize what they were doing. It's the same message of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, was saying, while he was on cross, right? That people, oh Father, forgive them, not knowing what they're doing. Prophet Muhammad asked for mercy and forgiveness for the people of Taif and asked God, help them and their children to understand and to accept the message of one God. So that those stories and my prophet actually also helped me by as a role model for me at the lowest level, the lowest point of my life. And I looked up his life more and more. I went through and read more about his life, which I didn't as a child, but at that time I read more and more, and it gave me the inspiration that if my prophet could do that, if all the other prophets, Prophet Moses, Joseph, Jesus, peace be upon all of them, their lives are full of stories about mercy, love, kindness. And I read that, and it helped me to get the strength and the courage to forgive my attacker. And also in 2011, 10 years later, it gave me more courage and more strength to come out in public and launch a global campaign to save his life. So these are some of the role models I studied their lives, and I deeply thought about during that moment. Beside that, I also followed Nelson Mandela a lot, and it really amazes me that how he was able to stay calm and peaceful even after serving 27 brutal years in prison, where he was given a bucket to use for restroom purpose. 27 years he used a bucket. 27 years, every 6 months he could write one letter and he could receive one letter from the outside world. After that tremendous amount of brutality, inhuman cruelty, he was still so much calm, so peaceful. When he came out from the prison, he did not talk about revenge. He did not talk about punishing the people who put him through this terrible, terrible, life situation. He forgave them, and and because of his work, later on he got the Nobel Peace Prize, and he was able to lead his nation towards peace and reconciliation through forgiveness. So these are some of the stories and some of the role models tremendously helped me to stay calm and positive and focusing, rebuilding on my life and move forward.
I think that speaks amazingly to one of my favorite sayings is the idea that walk gently. Everyone you meet is fighting battles that you can't see. And although your scars are somewhat visible in a certain way, there are many scars that are invisible, and we all carry those inside of us. So to be able to reach out to those invisible scars and the people across from us and be patient with that, that's how that speaks to me. Do we have time for one more question?
Sure, absolutely. Yes.
I think we do. One final question. Just again, to try and end on a positive note, what have you found for you through the last couple of years, through this pandemic, that has been a silver lining or some positive outcomes for you over the trials of the last couple of years?
Silver lining. Well, one thing is change. Definitely that, we all are capable of changing ourselves in course of time, maturity, and understanding. And that is one. And I have seen, speaking with many people, locally, nationally, internationally, that even though we all went through tremendous pain and suffering, full of unknown and uncertainty, but people actually started enjoying life more than ever before, taking time to truly enjoy the company of their loved ones. People, and which, when I say people, including myself, taking time to enjoy the company of loved ones, friends, and family members. And the other thing I have learned and I've experienced as well, that people have bond pretty strongly within their networks. When I say networks, means like family, friends, and loved ones. And people also realize that once we come together, we can accomplish what we thought was not possible before. For example, everybody thought that, people will lose their job, people will not be able to survive, working from home will definitely cause a lot of stress, a lot of unknowns and anxiety. But in the course of time, we all learned that those challenges we are able to overcome because everybody came forward, everybody came together, employers, employees, people of all walks of life, they came together. And that proves that when we work together, we can face any issues together. We can face any issues and we can move forward together, and nothing is impossible. We can achieve whatever we want to achieve.
Thank you so much for honoring us with your presence, with this talk. We would like to thank everyone who attended through social media, through SCC Live, and please check out our website. We have more talks coming in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And if anyone is interested to learn more about our work and our messages, please feel free to visit worldwithouthate.org. And if you want to send any email to us, I'm sharing my email address. Is my first name, Rais@worldwithouthate.org. You can also send email to our executive director, Jessica@worldwithouthate.org. Thank you so very much for taking the time to join us today. Thank you.